All right, here's my next one. My church has a senior pastor who preaches about once a month. The other 3 weeks are messages brought by an associate pastor and others who are not ordained and not paid. Also, this is a Foursquare church that has women preaching about 2 Sundays a month. How does that square with the scripture and women not to be preaching? To be honest, the big draw for us to attend this church is that the pastor and congregation are mainly Polynesian, and we're more comfortable in that setting. But also, I'm watching your podcast and Jack Hibbs because I'm getting more information and deeper understanding through Pastor Steve and Pastor Jack than I am my own pastor. My pastor is a good man with good intentions, but the messages are light and surfacey because it seems like he's dumbing down the message so the unintelligent polys can understand him. Sorry for the lengthy post, but I really need a perspective and information to share with my husband, who at this point says he will never leave this church, but I personally need more. So, Pastor Steve, what would you tell this person in that situation?
Okay, number one, well, I don't like the sentence where it says the messages are light and surfacey, because it seems like he's dumbing the message down so the unintelligent polys can understand him. I don't like that. It's that is, yeah. I don't teach down to people. I expect people to be adults and they can understand biblical concepts. The Bible's written on basically an 8th or 9th grade level. And so people can understand it. You can make it more complicated than it needs to be. And I'm not saying that there's not complicated issues in Scripture. There are, and I think that they need to be explored. But I don't like that kind of approach towards people, if that is actually the case. The other thing I want to take away from this in your email here is you're talking about what's happening with your husband. And the Bible's clear on the fact that you're supposed to be treating him like he's Jesus. And one of the cool things about being a woman is that a lot of times women are way more spiritually in tune than a lot of guys can be, and they have some different motives many times that make it easier for them to receive the Lord and understand spiritual things, and so I think that's good about what you're talking about here, because you do bring up a bunch of good points. And so when you say, for example, how does that square with the scripture that women should not be preaching? And you're exactly right. That is what it says. And I have been on both ends of that issue. When I was a young Christian, I tried to justify women teaching with all kinds of mental gymnastics. And it didn't take me too long to figure it out, less than 6 months. It didn't take me too long to figure out that was just something I was getting from the world. And the Bible does actually teach that it's men that are supposed to be preaching from the pulpit. And so that has to do with roles in the church specifically. And also it has to do with roles in marriage specifically. 2 areas where God sets up headship under male authority. And one is in the church and the other is in marriage. And so you are absolutely right about that. So it doesn't square with it. And so if I came to church and had a lady preaching, and this is just me, I would quietly and politely get up and walk out because I'm a guy and that's not supposed to be happening. So anyway, there's that. Then there's what's happening with your husband. And so you're called to be submissive to him, and you're called to treat him like he's Jesus, like I was saying. And so there needs to be some finesse in handling the situation. And I think that one of the things that you're doing is good. You're going to other sources, and you mentioned me and Pastor Jack, and I think that's all great. So you're going to other sources to get your understanding of what Scripture has to say, and so that's a good thing. I would be praying for your husband. I'd just be going, Jesus, just show the guy. And you get to talk to him. You do get to talk to him. But 1 Peter chapter 3, you know the passage, talks about you can win your husband without a word. And the reason that it says that is because ladies are more verbal than men are. And so ladies talk things out. Men are a lot less verbal. And so one of the things that I would ask you if I was counseling with you is, have you told him your perspective? Have you talked to him about the issues? Does he understand where you're coming from? And if you, and I mean, does he understand where you're coming from? Not does he agree with where you're coming from? Because a lot of times people think, well, if they don't agree, they don't really understand. Well, you can disagree and understand. And so does he understand where you're coming from? And if he does, you don't need to talk to him a whole lot more. You just need to live your life before him, walk with Jesus. And when you're having conversations about this stuff, you can bring up what you've learned from another Bible study or things like that. And when he brings up the conversation, you can address stuff. But I would be praying that God gets a hold of this guy and points out that maybe you need to be checking out a different fellowship or be getting some more good teaching from another source. And so, that would be my take on this. And the part of the point that I'm making here is I think that understanding things biblically is very important, and I think it's something that God calls us to. But you can do that without wrecking your marriage, because your marriage is way important, and God cares about it. And so God can get a hold of this guy. He can turn him around. And so I would trust God with your husband in this situation. So.